All right, so what we're going to be doing today is a brief review of Unit 3 and 4. Again, I will be going through this stuff pretty quickly, so make sure you have your notes in front of you. If I'm going too fast, stop me and say, Mr. King, what are you talking about? I don't remember this. I'm pretty sure I haven't added anything new to the notes with a few exceptions. I've just updated a few things. If that is the case, I'll let you guys know. Otherwise, this is all, again, review. So I will be going quickly, just underline, highlight, whatever you need to. And again, as I'm going through all of this, keep in mind that you do have that chart that I passed around today. You might just want to briefly look over those questions. Many of those questions are asking things like, how did the president stabilize the government? How was America more democratic as a result of these two time periods? So again, as you guys are discussing or are going over the lecture and review, make sure you emphasize the different key points to make sure you are staying on top of your key facts here. So we ended with the American Revolution, and we ended with the Constitution, Articles of Confederation. So what we're going to be talking about now is the early republic and the first president. Obviously, you should know the trends. America in the 1790s, population was doubling every 25 years, and the majority of Americans were still living where, though? In the farms, right? Still living on farms. You do have cities starting to emerge, though, so you start seeing the top 10 cities, and so you have that kind of going on. Nonetheless, the conditions of America, previously we fought a revolution, we had the Articles of Confederation. There's a lot of debts to be paid. There's a lot of money to be owed. And so when George Washington becomes president, he inherits a lot of these problems. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, did George Washington strengthen or stabilize the government? I mean, I would argue, yes, he did, right? So we're going to go over this. And as you categorize which of these are political, economic, or international policies, make sure you're still asking yourself, did he strengthen my government, and if so, how? And could he have done worse? I think he could have. So first off, George Washington. You guys might remember this part of the lecture from years past. Here he is fighting British zombies at the Battle of Saratoga. In any case, George Washington is inaugurated as President of the United States. And as you may notice, most of the people at this inauguration are wealthy, elite. And so what indication does that give to you about people that can vote so far? Just the wealthy and the elite, right? You don't have common people that are allowed to vote yet, because typically the basic requirement of being able to vote is you have to have what? Land. Property or land. So you're going to see this change, though, in Unit 4, right? So be aware, we're starting off with this new government where land requirements are an expectation. Again, one of his first things is he creates a cabinet. Is that in the Constitution? No. A cabinet? No. So that's an extra presidential power that he creates for himself. So already, is President Washington trying to stretch this new government of his? Definitely. He's trying to stretch these new powers. He creates a political cabinet, and he establishes a Bill of Rights. So again, he's trying to appease his anti-federalist enemies. He's trying to make sure we have more of a compromised government. The other thing that he does is he passes the Judiciary Act of 1789, which establishes what? No, not judicial review. It establishes the Supreme Court. It establishes the Supreme Court and federal court systems. So you should be familiar with the Judiciary Court of 1789 because, again, it established the Supreme Court and the federal court system. Good so far. Again, if you have questions, let me know. So, now we have to pay off this debt. And is the debt substantial? Yes, it's a huge debt, folks. Today, it's upwards of about $5.77 trillion if it was today's debt. So, yeah, it's a lot. So, we have to pay off this debt. And Hamilton, who happens to be Secretary of what? Treasury. He says, well, I have a plan to pay off this debt. We can pay it off in two ways. Number one, we can assume the debts of the states. And the idea was, if we assume the debts of the states, then who will the people that lent the money care more about? Are they going to care about the states, or are they going to care about the federal government? the federal government. So he's trying to give more power to the federal government. So again, you see that national debt becomes a national blessing argument, right? You have that kind of going on. And then he also says, and we'll fund that debt at par, which means what are we going to do with the debt that we just took on? We're going to pay it back plus interest, which means we're going to go ahead and give more money back to certain states. And so Hamilton thinks this is a great idea. Who doesn't like this idea at all?
Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson says, no, you can't do that. That's not fair. Because while I understand that there are a lot of debts that have to be paid, if we take on the state's debts, then we're going to divide that debt amongst all the states, and that's not fair. You guys remember the dinner steak analogy?
Yeah.
Right? We all go to dinner, and either we all pay our separate meals, you guys all get salads and I get a steak, and we pay our own way, or at the end of the meal, you guys get salads, I order $1,000 steak, and I say, let's divide the bill evenly. 30 ways. And so clearly, that's what Hamilton wants to do. He wants to take the entire check and say all 13 states should pay the bill. But states like Virginia, that Jefferson is from, is saying, no, that's not fair. Virginia didn't fight the majority of this, where Massachusetts did. So Massachusetts should pay the bulk of this bill. So that's where Jefferson is coming from. That's his argument. The other thing, though, that Hamilton does that Jefferson does not like is Hamilton says, in order to pay off this debt, we have to create a bank. The bank will print money. The bank will allow us to, get loans. It'll be a safe place for government. I mean, this bank will be great for us. And Hamilton says, the reason why I have the power to create a bank is you can find that power where in the Constitution? The Elastic Clause, where Hamilton says, according to the Elastic Clause 1.8.18, or implied powers, or the necessary and proper clause, he said, I'm allowed to create a bank because creating a bank will let me do what? Right, it's necessary to complete the other powers already in the Constitution. What are those powers called that are already in the Constitution? Now, implied powers is what we're interpreting from the Constitution. Enumerated powers or explicit powers, right? So again, he said, if an explicit power is to regulate commerce, is it implied that I'm allowed to create a bank? That's the argument. Now, what does Jefferson say about that? Well, buddy, you can't do that because you don't have that power. According to the 10th Amendment, if the power is not for the federal government in the Constitution, that power belongs to who? The states. Now, who's right? They're both right because these are both part of the U.S. Constitution now. So Jefferson says if it's not allowed, then it's forbidden. And Hamilton says, whoa, if it's not forbidden, then it's allowed. And again, both are correct, and this whole debate over whether or not you can interpret the Constitution loosely or strictly ends up resulting in the beginning of the first two-party system, which you should be familiar with. Now, the leaders of the Federalists are Hamilton, and the leaders of the Democratic Republicans will be Jefferson. Primarily, supporters of the Federalists will be wealthy Northeasterners, right? Whereas supporters of the Democratic Republicans will primarily be farmers or Westerners, right? People that don't really like big government. In terms of constitutional support, where do the Federalists find their power in the Constitution? Elastic Clause. And the Democratic Republicans find their power where?
10th Amendment.
The 10th Amendment. In terms of ideas of government, the Federalists want big government, small government. They want big, strong, powerful government. And the Democratic Republicans, they want weak government and strong states. They want strong state government. So make sure you guys see the difference there, because those will be critical differences. In terms of domestic policy, they're for or against the bank, for or against funding at par. You can talk about for or against the Whiskey Rebellion. Those are all key things here. In terms of foreign policy, the Federalists are for which European country? Well, the Federalists are pro which country? The Federalists are pro-British. Remember that? Remember the war? The French Revolution? Whereas the French are the Democratic Republicans are pro-French. And then in terms of bank, the Federalists are pro-bank, and then the Democratic Republicans are anti-bank. So everyone good with that so far? This will pretty much round out that chart that I gave you guys today. Well, we ultimately decide, okay, fine, we're going to go ahead and give you this new government, this new bank, but in exchange, what are we going to do? No, we're going to move the capital to Washington, D.C. That's not super important. Now, one of the other things that Washington does is he passes the tariff of 1789 that's recommended by Alexander Hamilton. Now, this tariff, he said, was a protective tariff that was supposed to protect who? Infant industries. It was supposed to protect infant industries. Now, Hamilton likes this tariff also because it's going to help the Northeast or the West. Who's primarily going to benefit from a tariff like this? The Northeast. Northerners, Easterners, merchants, factory, industrial people are going to benefit from this. Why won't farmers benefit from this? What's going to happen to their prices? Prices are going to go up. Because imagine if you can buy British goods for $4 and American goods are $7. Which one are you going to buy? The $4 British goods. But if we put a tariff on British goods to make them $10 to make them competitive with American goods, if I'm a farmer and I don't make those goods and I can only buy them from either England or Northeastern America, am I going to benefit from this tariff? No, I'm going to end up having to pay more for my products. And so farmers hate this tariff because it increases their costs. And Jefferson hates this tariff because he feels that it's good for the Northeast but bad for the Southwest. Then there's the Whiskey Rebellion. Whiskey Rebellion was a rebellion because there was a tax on whiskey, again, one way to help pay off the debt. And the farmers and Jefferson were upset because primarily this hurt farmers, and so they rebelled. And what was Washington's response to the Whiskey Rebellion? He sent the U.S. Army of 13,000 troops to put down a rebellion of about 300. And the reason why he did that was to show what? The government was strong. And so again, the Whiskey Rebellion happened because they felt that the government was becoming too strong, right? They were taking away their right to a living, they were taking away their whiskey, they were taking away their money. They were trying to challenge this new government. Did they fail? Yes, they did. Significance of this event, though, is that it showed that the new U.S. government or constitution was strong. Cool with that? Cool with that. Now, Thomas Jefferson saw this event, the Whiskey Rebellion. He was pretty upset, so he threatened to resign. And Washington said, no, you're not allowed to resign. I need you. Did we talk about the Battle of Fallen Timbers? We did? So the Battle of Fallen Timbers is something else you guys should know. Native Americans, they want their land back. They're kind of upset that the Americans are expanding west. I bet they wish the British won, huh? Yeah, well, the British didn't win, so the Native Americans are being attacked by the Americans, colonists, or no, the Americans are attacking the Native Americans. And the Battle of Fallen Timbers War in the Northwest Territory ends with the Treaty of Greenville. Cool with that? Then the French Revolution happens, which is not that critical to you guys, but you should know the implications. During the French Revolution, America wants to side with the French here, right? They think it's great. And then all of a sudden the French Revolution becomes what? Yeah, it becomes bloody, it becomes the reign of terror, and all of a sudden we're not so supportive of this anymore. And so what political party decides, I don't support the French anymore? The Federalists say, oh, you're killing wealthy people, and that's who we represent. We can't have any of that anymore. And so the French ask the Americans to help out. They say, you must honor which treaty? Nope. The French say America must help them and honor what treaty? The Franco-American Alliance. The Franco-American Alliance said, we have a military alliance now. We helped you during your revolution, so are we expected to repay the favor? Of course. But Washington said, no, we're not going to do that. We're too weak of a country. And if we go to war in England, might we get drawn into war? And might we become a colony again because we were likely going to lose that war? Sure. And so he declares neutrality. And who's happy about that? Which political party is happy about that? The Federalists, like, huzzah, we won't help the French. But who's not happy about that? The Democratic Republicans. They're very upset. Then there's Citizen Genet that you guys don't have to worry about, so don't worry about that guy. And so everyone good with the French Revolution so far? Then there's problems with the British. They don't leave us alone. What 3 things are they doing? Who's going to raise their hand and tell me what 3 things the British are doing that are a very large frustration for us? Julian, tell me one. They're impressing sailors with their magic tricks. And also forcing them into the Navy. Caro, give me another. Yeah, they're not leaving the western frontier forts, even though they promised to. And lastly, what else are they doing? Maria. They're inciting Native American rebellions. And so we politely send John Jay to negotiate a treaty. And what do we get from this treaty, guys? Nothing. We get nothing from the treaty. They're like, yeah, we're going to leave the forts eventually, and we're sorry about the impressment. We're going to keep doing that. And yeah, we're not going to stop inciting Native American rebellions because they deserve their land. And, oh yeah, you owe us money. Oh, okay, we'll pay you back. So we don't get anything out of this, but it does result in America being required to repay back its debts. But despite this being a failure in terms of enumerated goals, they're happy. Why are they happy? It prevented war. John Jay, you're the man. You did it. Now, who's not happy with this? The Democratic Republicans. They called him a traitor, saying, you call this a treaty? The British are the enemy. They're the ones who are misleading us. They are, taking advantage of us. You can't call this a good treaty. So they're upset, naturally. But what is the unintended consequence of Jay's treaty? Oh, Pinckney's treaty kind of just comes along with it. And who gives it to us? The Spanish. The Spanish are like, oh my gosh, America's best friends with everybody. We got to join that club. So America decides to sign Pinckney's treaty, which gives us access to what? The Mississippi River. And who desperately needs access to the Mississippi River? Which Americans? Westerners, Western farmers. They desperately need access to the Mississippi River. So that's definitely going to make the Jeffersonians happy because it's going to help Western farmers. Then Washington eventually steps down and he establishes what? A 2-term precedent for presidents. And he says in his final farewell address, what? Who can raise their hand and tell me? What does he say? He warns us against 2 things. What are they? Samantha, give me one. Yeah, no permanent alliances with foreign countries. We might get drawn into a war. And what's the second? Francisco. Avoid the 2-party system. What would he say if he saw our government today? He would not be happy. Now, let's assess Washington real quick. We all know his political stuff, economic stuff, international stuff, right? You guys can fill that out on your chart on your own. Just identify which one's which. Did he strengthen the government or not? Yes. Whiskey Rebellion was a really good example. Did he try to pay back the debt? Most definitely. Did he try to establish peaceful relations with European governments? Yes, he did. So when you go over your political, economic, and foreign policy stuff on those charts, use those as your facts to say, oh yeah, this guy was pretty good. He did help out America. He did make America strong. Oh yeah, you do it just like that. And in that kind of chart form. Everyone cool? Any questions about any of Washington or his facts or not knowing where it might fall? Like judicial would still be considered politics and the bank would fall where? Economic. Good, and good. And I would also say that he held the government together even though there was a two-party system that could have torn the country apart, right? He said, don't do that! And he was wise enough to warn us against it. We did not listen. Let's talk about the election of 1796. And in the election of 1796, John Adams runs against Aaron Burr, runs against Thomas Jefferson. Who wins in this election? John Adams wins. He's a pretty cool guy. There he is. And he gets right down to business when he becomes president. First, he ends up fighting the quasi-war with France. This is the unofficial naval war with France. And why do we fight it? Yes, but why did this war begin? Because they said we violated the Franco-American alliance, right? And so they're attacking us now. And so we tried to end the quasi-war with a peace treaty. But this results in the XYZ Affair. And what happened during the XYZ Affair? They wanted a bribe, an exorbitant bribe, an expensive bribe, a bribe larger than normal. And so he said, shenanigans! We are not going to pay this bribe. If you are going to treat us this way, then to war! So, that happened. And so, eventually, we do end this with the Convention of 1800. But that's right about when John Adams kind of steps down. So, looking at his international policy already, would you say that John Adams made the government more or less stable? Less stable. He dragged us into a war, and he did not successfully fight that war. I mean, luckily he ended it, but primarily Napoleon's like, yeah, let's stop fighting. It wasn't John Adams who was like, we should end this. And then his party also passed the Alien and Sedition Acts. Who can raise their hand and tell me what was the purpose of these? Just the general purpose. What were they supposed to do? Brenda. Prevent immigrants from becoming citizens. Sure, that's the Alien Act. What's the Sedition Act, Myra? That's naturalization, but that's still part of the Alien Act, but that's still right. Karina. You can't say anything bad about the government. Anything else you guys want to add to that? Let's go with Lily. It was aimed at the Democratic Republicans. The whole point of this, folks, was to silence the critics of the Federalists or to hurt the Democratic Republicans, right? And so they wanted to take away freedom of speech, freedom of press. They wanted to be a government that could not be criticized. Is that a fair assessment? Sure. And so what ends up happening is the Democratic Republicans say, that's not fair, that's not okay, you can't do that, that is unconstitutional. You are taking away our freedoms as allocated in the Bill of Rights. So we're going to go ahead and say, you can't do that. We're going to go ahead and nullify that with the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. And the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions created this power called nullification, which said that states could nullify federal law if it hurt states, right? Everyone good on that so far? They said the power of nullification came from what theory? Compact theory. You guys remember compact theory? The basic idea is who made the federal government? The states. And if the federal government does not do what the states want, what can we do? We can take that power back. Social contract, right? Right to revolution, John Locke. That's embedded in the Constitution, embedded in the Enlightenment. So all good stuff. Now, this was challenging national government power, right? Just like the Whiskey Rebellion. So, was this successful in checking the power of this new government? It was not, guys. It did not end the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien and Sedition Acts remained. Remember, we wrote them, but it's not like anything happened with them. Did they actually nullify anything? No, they just said, that's bad. Thank you. Thank you for that, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. But it didn't do anything in practice. But did it create a good precedent for this idea of nullification? Sure. So when we say if this was significant in challenging the authority of the national government, it is significant. But was it successful? No, so there is a difference, right? I mean, understand the background. It's in response to the Alien Sedition Acts. It wasn't successful, but it was significant. Everyone cool with that? Just like Shays Rebellion, Bacon's Rebellion, Whiskey Rebellion. None of those three were successful, but they were all significant. Cool? Okay. Then the election of 1800 happens because John Adams is not going to get reelected because of the whole Alien and Sedition Acts and war with France thing. By the way, John Adams again, did he make the government weaker or stronger? Weaker. He definitely made the government weaker. He increased tensions between political parties, right? And he increased tensions with France, so that's no bueno. So, election of 1800 then, Jefferson runs against Adams and Jefferson wins. Yay! Here's Thomas Jefferson fighting guerrillas and trying to teach them about the Declaration of Independence. Natural rights is what he's saying there. Anywho, Thomas Jefferson gets elected the president of the United States, and we have this idea known as the Revolution of 1800. And we call this the Revolution of 1800 because this is the first peaceful transition of power, right? It was a revolution by the ballot, not the bullet. I mean, this is really a change in government. We went from a king to the Federalists, and were we going to murder each other again? Apparently not. Hey, go America. That's pretty cool. So you had the Revolution of 1800. Why was the revolution? Peaceful transition. You have a decline of political parties because he says, let's all be one party, right? He tries to make that his key idea. He wants to be a moderate. I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Federalist. We're all Americans. There you go. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. He wanted peaceful diplomacy. Did he want to go to war with the Europeans? No, he tried to avoid war. He tried to be, neutral. So again, he was pragmatic also, right? That's also awesome. We know he's pragmatic because of what did he do with the Alien and Sedition Acts? He did not repeal them. He just let them expire. He's like, well, maybe that could be useful to me. I'm going to keep that. Maybe when I pass this embargo, I can use that against my critics. And what did he do about the tariff? Kept the tariff. And what about the bank? What do you do about the bank? Kept it. What's the one that he did get rid of? Whiskey tax. He's like, you know what? You can't tax alcohol. That is not okay. Have you heard of the 18th Amendment? It's not going to pass, man. He had foresight. Impressive. But he's a very pragmatic president, so you should be aware. By being a pragmatic president, instead of being, you have to do this, or the complete opposite, does that make the government more or less stable? More stable. He's a moderate. He's a centrist. Guys, imagine being on a seesaw and you stand on one side or the other. Yeah, and he's going to stand right on the middle. Is that going to make that seesaw more or less balanced? More balanced. I would argue it's actually more unstable, but seesaw's a really bad example. But anyway, one of the things that he's also going to have to deal with is the Judiciary Act of 1801. And if you remember, this is where John Adams makes the midnight appointments. Kind of a, take that, Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans. You may have taken the presidency and Congress, but you will not take, not the Supreme Court, that also, but just in general, which branch of government? The judicial branch. And we're going to stuff Federalists in the judicial branch. We're going to appoint federal judges and Supreme Court judges and circuit judges. I mean, the Federalists will dominate the judicial branch, so you can't do everything that you want. These are known as the midnight appointments. Cool? Cool, cool, and cool? Cool. Well, in one of those situations, Marbury wants his job, Madison denies it. And so the significance of this is what? It establishes what? Judicial review. That's really all you guys have to know. It establishes the policy of judicial review. Questions there? I doubt that you'll have to know the background of, Marbury wants his job because he was a midnight appointment and Madison was like, no, and then blah, blah, blah. Jefferson was also, pretty pragmatic, idealist guy, because he tried to reduce the military. He said, if you have a small military, what are you less likely to do? Go to war, but we should defend ourselves. With what? Small navy. A mosquito fleet. Because a mosquito fleet is not good for invasion, but it is good for defense. But then he decides, you know what, we do need some more land. We probably should try to protect our western borders there. And Napoleon might be willing to sell his territory. And by the way, Napoleon was very much willing to sell his territory. He was not going to be able to maintain his empire anymore. So they offer to send a convoy to buy just New Orleans and this territory right here, right? All they want is a port of New Orleans and this small strip right here because this is still controlled by Spain. And how much are we willing to pay for that? $10 million. We will pay $10 million for the port of New Orleans and all lands east. Now Napoleon says, okay, I will take your land, but would you consider the rest of this French Empire? And they're like, well, how much are we talking? How much you got? And so Napoleon negotiates and offers the entirety of the French Empire for $15 million. So for $5 million more, we get this entire green piece of the Louisiana Purchase when we were offering 10 for this. So for $5 million, can you imagine a deal like that? I'd like to buy your car for $40,000. Make it $60,000 and I'll sell you every car on the lot. Deal. But that's the equivalent, right? You go to any of the car dealers, offer to buy one car, and they'll sell you every car for 50% more. That's a great deal. Now, Jefferson had some misgivings. Why did Jefferson have misgivings about this? Because he didn't say you could do that in the Constitution. He's like, I think that's unconstitutional. I don't know if I can do this, guys. I'm nervous about this. But is it going to be good for the country? Is it going to benefit the farmers? Are they going to be able to expand west? Will it be more democratic for the people? Yes, it'll allow us to have more land, be more egalitarian, be more democratic, improve the country. So he says, all right, I'll do it, deal. So they sign, and that becomes that. And then Lewis and Clark are like, hey, we should go and explore, because that's what we do in 1804. So they explore, and here they are exploring, and what are they looking for, by the way? Just any passage to the Pacific Ocean? A water passage. Guys, I could walk west. That's easy. We're looking for a water passage to the west, because that water passage will eventually allow us to what? Trade. And also, if we're traveling west, we won't, die of thirst. So a water passage to the west is very significant. So be aware of that. Then there's the Aaron Burr saga. Aaron Burr just does a lot of shenanigans. Aaron Burr tries to get New York to secede. That's one, right? Aaron Burr tries to get Louisiana to secede. That's two. Aaron Burr tries to get England and France to invade America. That's three. So Aaron Burr, a man who clearly does not love his country, he only loves what? Himself, and more importantly, he loves power. He wants control. He wanted to be the new leader of America. And he killed who? Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton would have never been a president, but still. Yeah, he would have never been president. He wasn't liked. He had too many enemies. That's why he didn't run in 1800 or 1796. He's not like William Jennings Bryan. He didn't even try. William Jennings Bryan was just never going to win. Hamilton, he could have won maybe, but he just had far too many enemies. William Jennings Bryan was not going to win because he wasn't a good candidate. That's why he wasn't going to win. He was too much of a cowardly lion. Anyway, this new war breaks out between the British and the French in the Napoleonic Wars, and America wants to do what? We want to remain neutral. It's not our war, Europe. Washington said to stay out of it, so we're not going to honor any of our treaties. That's what we're going to do. But the British say, well, you can't trade with them, and the French say, well, you can't trade with them, and America says, but we're neutral, so we're going to trade with both of you guys. And the Orders in Council, they impress our soldiers, and the continental system, they impress our soldiers. And how happy are we about this? Not happy at all. And so Jefferson says, fine, you're not going to take America seriously, and you're going to attack us? Embargo. Oh, grab me. And you have the Embargo Act of 1807, which is somewhere on the slide, but is hiding behind this picture. You have the Embargo Act of 1807, which is an embargo of all British goods. And the idea was it was supposed to show the American people, or show the Europeans, you need us, you see? And if you don't take us seriously, well, then we're going to have the last laugh. You're going to suffer, Europe. And then what happened? America suffered because we were overconfident. They needed us more than we needed them. So that foreign policy did not pan out so well. The Embargo Act was a bad idea. So in this sense, would you say he made the government more or less strong? Less strong. But he did do some good stuff also, right? So as you're evaluating Jefferson, make sure you hit all the high and low points. Then the election of 1808, James Madison runs. There he is there. Cool guy. Cool guy, Steve. And he signs the Non-Intercourse Act, which said, no sexy time. Also, you may not trade with the British or the French, but you can trade with who? The rest of Europe. Just no British or French. Now again, that was cool, but is that still going to be bad for the American economy? Yeah. Yes, because the British and the French are our largest partners. By the way, what's happening in this cartoon? Yeah, he's cutting off the head of the snapping turtle. Oh, grab me. And we're like, but, the Non-Intercourse Act was cool, but that's not really working out for us. So how about Mason's Bill number 2? And in this one, it gets a little bit complicated, though. But it says, whichever country stops attacking us first, we will trade with them and embargo their enemy. But if both countries agree to trade with us, then we will trade with both equally and openly. And who's like, I will take advantage of that opportunity? Napoleon's like, I'll do that. And the British were like, what? How dare you? To war on you, America! And by the way, what did Napoleon not do? Napoleon never stopped attacking American ships. So that's not good. In the interim, while all these shenanigans are happening, you have Tecumseh and the prophet here saying, we should all rise up against the Americans and drive them off our land. And the British, they will help us. Oh, they will come. If you fight them, they will come. And so, they rise up and fight. Now the Warhawks, led by who? Calhoun and Henry Clay. These young Republicans, these young upstarts, they're young Democratic Republicans. They say, how dare they mistreat America, inciting rebellion, impressing our soldiers, not leaving the frontier forts, threatening war on us. How dare they? The British are attacking our ships. We should go to war with all of them, Canada, Spain, the Native Americans, the British. And they wanted this because they heard their fathers telling the stories of the American Revolution. They wanted their own war, so they pushed for war. Madison declares war, and the War of 1812 begins, also known as the Second War of Independence. This is why we also call it Mr. Madison's War, because Madison's the one who ultimately declared war. It's primarily against the British, the Canadians, and Native Americans. Again, one of the key things, they burned down Washington, D.C. Sad. Nope, Canada was a commonwealth of the British Empire. I mean, Canada doesn't actually get independent until the 1900s, like the mid-1900s. They become an independent of the British Commonwealth. I mean, when Canada entered, I think it's World War II, they entered because England declared war. And then Canada declared war also because even though they're independent like America, they were self-governing, but they were for like the last 400 years or so. And so only recently did they finally become openly independent of the British, but they still consider themselves part of the British Commonwealth. They're just an independent country of the British Commonwealth. Like the Queen is still their queen. Anyway, and then you have the Battle of New Orleans, where who becomes the hero? Andrew Jackson. Battle of New Orleans, hero of New Orleans. And the Treaty of Ghent is signed. And the War of 1812 is over. And we gain our independence again, and we prove to the British that we're powerful and strong, and they can't tell us what to do. And really, what came out of this treaty, folks? Nothing. We just went back to status quo. But the significance, though, is that we did defeat the British, and we defeated the British how? Yeah, without French assistance. We did it on our own. And will the British take us seriously now? Yes, they will. Now, the Hartford Convention also happened during the War of 1812. And this will spell the end of which political party? The Federalists. Now, you have to remember, the Federalists felt that the Democratic Republican government was becoming too powerful. They were declaring war against the British that they liked. And so the Hartford Convention is, again, an example of a group of people trying to rise up and weaken or challenge the power of this strong national government. Does it succeed? No, it does not. But is it significant? Because it spelled the death of the Federalist Party. Cool there. I think so. So yeah, significance of the War of 1812. We just did that. Cool. Cool. Huh? Who? Oh, they want to abolish the Three-Fifths Compromise. No, they don't do anything. Nothing gets done. And then the election of 1816, James Monroe gets elected President of the United States, and you have the ushering in of the era of good feelings. And people felt good, and people felt great, and it was a good time because we were dealing with Post-Ghent Nationalism, right? We had a lot of American authors writing some pretty sweet books, like Washington Irving and James Fenimore Cooper, writing books like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle and The Last of the Mohicans. We have painters painting beautiful American landscapes that become world-renowned. We built a new bank, which we felt pretty awesome about, and we rebuilt the White House. Our Navy and Army expanded. We felt pretty good. We felt pretty good about ourselves. And one way we were going to improve the U.S. economy was through what? The American system. And the American system was, again, supposed to improve the U.S. economy with a three-point plan. Very similar to what other three-point plan? I mean, the American system is very similar to who else's economic plan? Hamilton's plan, right? So you should be able to draw the connection between Hamilton's plan and Clay's plan. And the 3 points of the plan were, one, it was going to have a strong central bank. Number two, it was going to have a protective tariff. And number three, what were they going to improve? Internal improvements, roads, canals, schools, buildings, whatever else. And in doing so, was that going to improve the U.S. economy? Was it going to improve transportation? Most definitely. So again, social, economic, and political nationalism. You guys are good there, right? Which ones? Cool. But it wasn't an era of good feelings. It was an era of bad feelings too. That's a misnomer. I tell you, not completely true. Because bad things happen too. Panic of 1819, guys. What caused it? Over speculation. And you know whose fault that was? You know who we blamed? The bank. It was the bank's fault. The bank was over speculating and allowing people to borrow and borrow and borrow. And when it realized that these things were too good to be true, the economy collapsed and farmers lost their lands. And so you know what? This is not an era of good feelings. It's an era of bad feelings. This land expansion is not good. And so that's kind of a problem, folks, over speculation. By the way, again, they're blaming the current economic crisis on our central bank as well, the Federal Reserve. They're saying it's the Federal Reserve's fault. They blamed it again in 1836. It's the Federal Reserve's fault. It's always the central bank's fault, if you want to ask anyone. People start expanding west at this time as well, and so in order to be able to sell land to the people, because again, the population in the west is growing and growing, we passed the Land Act of 1820, and why do we do that? Yeah, to be able to have them to buy land at cheap prices, right? We're going to sell land at $1.25 an acre. So again, the idea is to allow them to move west easier. And then the Missouri Compromise happened. You guys know the Missouri Compromise? It's pretty easy. In the Missouri Compromise, Missouri became a state, and Missouri said, we want to become a slave state now. Well, a senator named Talmadge tried to pass an amendment that tried to eliminate slavery, right? The basic idea was, okay, here's what we're going to do. You can't bring in new slaves. All slave children will be set free, and you'll eventually have to set all your slaves free eventually. The whole point was to eventually make Missouri what? A free state. But Missouri's like, that's shenanigans. We're not going to do that. So let's pass a compromise, let's say, they said. And so they did. Missouri became a slave state. Maine became a free state. And they said no slavery allowed above the 3630 line, with the exception of states already slave owning, right? So again, Missouri, Kentucky, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware are the only exceptions. Cool, 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 cool. And Chief Justice John Marshall's Court, McCulloch v. Maryland, said the bank was constitutional and you may not have laws that conflict with the federal government. Right? You may not have laws that conflict with federal law. Or state law may not conflict with federal law. Cohens v. Virginia. It's about lottery tickets. But the significance here is it said that the Supreme Court could review state Supreme Court decisions, which suggests what? That the Supreme Court is the final say. Cool. Gibbons v. Ogden, what may states not do? Regulate interstate commerce. States may not regulate interstate commerce, so take that, New York. Fletcher v. Peck, what may states not do? They may not break contracts, and this is good for who but bad for who? Besides states, it's also good for private businesses, but bad for the commoner or public. Good for private, bad for public. Dartmouth v. Woodward, same thing. Constitution, again, the states may not break contracts, again, even if it's good for the government or good for the people. And that's not good either. Am I going to have all of them? No, I'll have a few, but you won't know which ones. So. And generally, I mean, if anything, you should just know generally what happened. You're not going to have to know the background of like, oh, well, this is the one about lottery tickets. You should generally know that it made states weaker. It made the federal government more powerful. That's generally the trend. But Gibbons v. Ogden, that's a definite must, right? Because that's the one that's the clear standing interstate commerce one. So if anything, know generally that it's about weakening state powers and making the federal government stronger. McCulloch v. Maryland, you should know by name. Marbury v. Madison, you should know by name. And Gibbons v. Ogden, you should know by name. The other ones know that it made the federal government more powerful than the states. Internationally, we signed the Treaty of 1818, which established what boundary? The 49th parallel. We also signed the Rush-Bagot Treaty, which disarmed the Great Lakes. But I thought we had the right to bear arms. Ha! Adams-Onis Treaty gave us access to what? Florida. Remember that fun story about Andrew Jackson tried to take it over, even though he wasn't supposed to? So they're like, fine, let's just annex it. Because Andrew Jackson took it over already anyway, even without asking. Remember he was just chasing down Native Americans, and then that did not pan out so well, and he was like, how about instead of just taking them over, we just take the entire territory? Don't worry, America, I already did it. Just annex us. I own it now. Yes and no. Pretty much what happened was that he was supposed to chase down Native Americans, the Seminoles, and he chased them all the way into eastern Florida. And then while he did it, he also destroyed the Spanish fort. So he's like, hey, I took over Florida. They're like, what? You were just supposed to take over and stop the Native Americans. He's like, yeah, I did that also. So annex us. So they had to sign a treaty. Latin American revolutions are happening, and who's not happy about this? Who? No, no one's happy about this. Spain and Europe and England and France, they're not happy about this. So who's going to say, hey, don't come over here? Monroe says, you stay away. Europe, no swiping. And it said Europe may not colonize or intervene in the Western Hemisphere. That is Unit 3. You guys good? Take a 6-minute break. We're going to come back into Unit 4, guys. You guys doing okay, though? Okay, we'll be back at 6. Take a 6-minute break. We'll come right back. Yeah, they had IDs. All right, folks, here we go. Unit 4. Quiet down, and quiet down. Again, before you leave today, make sure you do sign in the back.
What's that for?
It's just to keep record of who does show up. Also, apparently I get paid to do these. I'm like, oh, really?
What?
Apparently. Normally I just do this for free, but they're like, we'll pay you. I'm like, okay. That sounds like a good deal. I have to do this anyway, but I only get paid if I have a roster. So normally, I do this every year, but this year they're willing to pay us. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. So it's not free time this year. Is that extra credit? Oh.
Why not?
Because naturally your grades will go up. Your extra credit is your... No. Don't grade grub. Jacksonian era, folks. Here we go. Quiet down. This is a lot, guys, so we got to get through this quickly. Shh. Okay, so the question we must ask ourselves is Jackson a Democrat or a dictator? The answer is both. And so if you ever run into that question, and by the way, folks, I have a very strong inkling that one of your essays this year has to be on Jackson. It's either going to be your second essay or it's going to be your DBQ. But there has to be a Jackson essay this year. There hasn't been a Jackson essay in years. There must be a Jackson essay this year. So don't worry, I'll give you a list of what I think the DBQs might be and a list of possible questions this year. But there has to be a Jackson essay. Hey, I guessed it the last 2 years. On the actual AP test. There must be a Jackson question. It just has to. Anyway, here we go. Election of 1824, Jackson runs against Adams and Clay. Adams wins because of the corrupt bargain. Everyone remember the corrupt bargain? Okay. What did Adams supposedly offer Clay? What position? Secretary of State. So know that, because usually they'll ask, what position was Clay offered? Secretary of State. Corrupt bargain. And as a result, Jackson says, you have betrayed the trust of the American people. I'm going to create my own party. So he does. And he creates the Jacksonian Democrats, and he campaigns for 4 años, 4 years. So he does that. And he says, you know what? I'm going to run on this platform of a corrupt bargain. So Quincy Adams becomes president, and Quincy Adams is a really good example of being a product of what? What role of women resulted in him being president of the United States? Republican motherhood. His mom raised him to be a good citizen.
Except Friday.
Yeah, and he became president of the United States. Republican motherhood. Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife. So, few things that he did. He increased the tariff of abominations, 1828. Who did not like this? Southern and Westerners, right? The Southwest states did not like this because they're farmers. And so who complained? Calhoun. I mean, the South, yes, and Calhoun specifically complained, and he complained so much that he had to write what? South Carolina Exposition, saying that this is unconstitutional and the state of South Carolina should what? Nullify, not secede. Secession comes later. But he threatens nullification, so does this come back again? Yes. This is before the nullification crisis. No, they're still cool. So far, they're fine right now. They won't be friends after the Peggy Eaton affair. The electorate begins to change though, guys, right? Right to vote changes. Primarily, people start moving out west, and as people move out west and the population grows, will these people be more commoners? Will they be less educated? Yes, and they're moving out west. And what else do you start seeing happening in these new western states? What do they start taking away? In terms of vote, they start taking away property requirements to vote. They start taking away property requirements to vote. That's a big change. People start voting more because they feel compelled to vote, because are they voting for a guy that looks like them? Yes, an Andrew Jackson kind of dude. Then we went from a caucus, which says who gets to appoint the next president? Small group of people. We changed that to what? A convention in which who gets to choose? The people get to choose. And today we have a direct primary, but don't worry about that. Cool there? So caucus versus convention. Caucus is a small group. Convention, the people get to choose. Okay? So why did democratization increase? Well, you have universal white male suffrage, party nominating conventions versus caucuses, spoil system. The spoil system did what for us, guys? Yeah, commoners went into office. You had the rise of third parties, popular campaigning, parades, rallies, kissing babies, that kind of stuff. Two-party system returns, and good stuff. So, the election of 1828 happens. And Jackson runs, and Jackson wins, 56% of the popular vote. This is also the first time we have more than 1 million people vote, so that's kind of cool. Can you imagine? 1 million people voted. We're like, oh my gosh, 1 million people. It's a lot. Andrew Jackson, despite having his wife dead, becomes the next president of the United States. By the way, why did she pass away? Because they were mean to her. They called her a whore and a prostitute. No, not a prostitute, a whore. An adulteress, and he called his mother a prostitute, both of which were technically true. Remember, his mother was a British prostitute, and she did marry Andrew Jackson, even though she was married to the other guy. But they hadn't spoken in like 8 years. So, I mean, to her, they were divorced, but not under the law. So that happened. Anyway, he becomes president, and he has his inauguration. And instead of having an inauguration ball, he has an inauguration brawl. And so his enemies are like, you see, you want this guy to be president of the United States? I mean, he's King Mob. Look at the people. This is chaos. This is pandemonium. I would argue that the government is more unstable under Jackson. Now, would Jackson disagree? Like, no, this is more of a government of the people. This is more stable. But they called him King Andrew because they said he was a dictatorship. He was using the people for his own devices. He was swaying their emotions. And so one thing that he did that can be debated is the rotation in office or spoils system. You guys know the difference, right? You brought the commoners into office, and you can say, that's more democratic than before, or these people are idiots. Good? Cool? Next up, kitchen cabinets. Hey, that's not constitutional because you're supposed to be using what?
Your official cabinet.
Your official cabinet, not a group of dudes that you hang out with. That is not okay. That's unconstitutional. Because, folks, is there accountability here?
No.
Did we elect these people to give Jackson advice? We don't know what they're saying. They could be crazy. For all we know, these people could be 5 years old. And then the Peggy Eaton affair happened. Remember Peggy Eaton affair?
Yes.
Peggy Eaton had a bad reputation, and so Mrs. Calhoun was talking smack, and then Andrew Jackson was like, hey, nobody puts baby in the corner. And then he yells at Calhoun, and then Calhoun yells at Jackson, and they stop being friends, and then Calhoun resigns as president, and then the cabinet splits up, all over Peggy Eaton. And so the Peggy Eaton affair actually disrupts the government, but it shows that Jackson's a good guy, right? He's for the common man, but unfortunately, will this make the government weaker or stronger? Weaker. I mean, he's going to put this one woman over the interest of the entire United States government? I mean, come on. That's ridiculous, says his enemies. And then the nullification crisis happened. So, remember, are Calhoun and Jackson friends anymore? No siree, Bob. And so Jackson says, hey, I will lower that tariff. I will lower it by some to, I forget the number. To 35%, thank you. But Calhoun says, that is not low enough. And so we are going to do what to that tariff, Jackson? We are going to nullify it. And Jackson says, look, I'm totally for states' rights. And states' rights are pretty awesome. However, what right don't states have? Nullification. Because you have states' rights until you threaten the union, right? Your states' rights stop when you threaten the union. So if you nullify, I will come and attack you and kill everyone. And South Carolina said, if you come, we will what?
Fight.
We will fight and secede. So Jackson says, okay, let's do this. And Clay was like, gentlemen, please, let's not fight. I have a solution. Compromise tariff of 1833. So he prevents this escalation of conflict. And then you have the force bill where Jackson kind of punches Calhoun in the back of the head saying, hey, I'm going to attack you whenever I want. I'm the president. I can collect tariffs whenever I want. That's the force bill, not to be confused with the force acts. What's the difference? What were the force acts supposed to do? You protect Southerners from who? Protect them from the African Americans? Protect African Americans from the KKK. Awesome. Now, did this make the government weaker or stronger? I would argue stronger, right? Because it challenged him and he's like, no, I will not back down. I will collect that tariff. We will maintain this union. I'm Andrew Jackson. But in terms of a conflict that challenged the government, did it try to challenge a strong national government again? Like the Whiskey Rebellion, like the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. Sure. Did it fail? But did it show a significance? So I keep on going with that again. Bank war. Jackson hates this bank. He wants to kill it. It's a hydra monster. It's bad for the people. It's corrupt. It's elite. It's un-American. Let's kill it. So Jackson says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to veto this bill. I'm going to veto the bank recharter. And then he shines the bank recharter and columns collapse and light shines through. And Clay's like, yes, I've got you now. Because what did Clay want to do with the bank? He wanted to make it an election issue. Now, by the way, folks, what is Jackson's whole problem with the bank? He thinks the bank is unconstitutional, right? Because he believes that there shouldn't be a national bank. There should be what? State banks. Remember, he's technically a strict constructionist. He's a Jeffersonian for the most part. And so he believes that there should not be this big bank. And that's also why he doesn't like what? What other big economic system is Clay promoting that Jackson hates? The American system. He says the American system is not good. You're saying that every state should pay for roads? Why not just make the states that the road goes through pay for them? That's unconstitutional. Again, it's just like the bank that, or the debts, right? So again, he believes that the American system is unconstitutional as well. Anyway, the election of 1832, Jackson runs, and he wins, and he kills the bank because he had a mandate from the people. He says, it's bank killing time. So he kills the bank, and Biddle's like, oh no, you don't. So Biddle intentionally creates a panic to show what? That the bank is important. I'll show you. And then he showed us. And then the bank really was important. And Jackson's like, oh, darn. But Jackson decides to take all of the money out of the bank, and he puts it in what? Pet banks. And the pet banks were cool for a while because now it put the power of the federal bank into what? State banks or local banks. The problem was these local banks began what practice? Over speculation. They became what kind of banks? Wildcat banks. And is that going to lead to a depression? You got it. But in order to stop the wildcat banks and the lending of all this money, Jackson said, nay, you can't lend money anymore. Specie Circular Act, which said what? You can only buy land with gold and silver. Now, up to this point, folks, if I was a local bank, what was I giving you to buy land? I was giving you a piece of paper saying, Bank of Andrew King. Don't worry, I'm good for it. I'll pay you back eventually. Does that make sense? But did that bank actually give away gold and silver to people? No. And so in order for Jackson to stop over speculation, he said, you got to give them gold or silver. And the bank's like, oh, I don't know about that. I like keeping the gold and silver for ourselves and giving them the paper money that represents gold and silver. Does that make sense to everyone? And so now the banks start saying, okay, we'll stop lending money out because we don't want to give out gold and silver. Is that going to cause the Depression of 1837? So did the vetoing of the bank increase or decrease the strength of the government? It decreased the strength of the government. I mean, was that a personal issue that he kind of made a national issue? I think so. Maybe that was not the best thing for him to do. Then there's Native American issues, which are also not bueno. But to be fair, he did not lead them on that trail. Cherokee Nation v. Georgia, Worcester v. Georgia. In Cherokee Nation v. Georgia, John Marshall ruled that the Cherokee Nation was not what? It was not an independent foreign nation. It was a domestic dependent. That means it's part of the U.S., right? So it can't suit it directly to the Supreme Court. Case is thrown out. Did Jackson do that? No, that was John Marshall. Then Worcester v. Georgia. Marshall rules that Cherokee do have what? Property rights, and so they can protect their rights. And this is the entire time that Jackson's trying to get them to move, not because he hates them, because he's trying to protect them, right? He feels that whites will murder all these Native Americans. I mean, Native Americans were his best friends. So he says, move east, please, or move west, please. The whites will take this land anyway, just go. But John Marshall, he gave them property rights. And so, John Marshall, you've made your decision, now you enforce it. I'm not going to make them stay there. Right, it's against judicial review. He says, I am the final arbiter of the Constitution, not you, John Marshall. Anyway, Jackson says, well, you need to sign the Indian Removal Act, sir. And so he issues it saying, you got to go east. West. You got to go west. I'm thinking they're going to go east and eventually end in the west. I mean, but then you can also go west, which is faster. But then maybe they want to go the scenic route. Anyway. So the Indian Removal Act happens, and he says you eventually have to go to the West, in Oklahoma and the reservations. And they're like, I'll give you like 8 years, which I feel like is a good amount of time. And then the Trail of Tears happens in 1838. Was Jackson president? No. It wasn't his fault. So all those Jackson haters out there, you tell them, I'm sorry, in what years did Jackson serve as president of the United States? And as I recall, that in Trail of Tears was 1838. So how was it possible that Jackson killed all these people? Nay, it was not him. It was Martin Van Buren. Anyway, in the election of 1836, you will see the birth of the Whig Party. Pretty much this is a party that hates Jackson. So you should be familiar with the Jackson Party. I believe you do or do not have this in your notes. So you either should take time to do this or go online later and copy it down later. Or I'll just print you guys out a copy of this. I'll print you guys out a copy of it, and you guys will have it on Tuesday or Friday, whenever I see you guys. But yeah, you guys should know, and the staple in your notebooks, okay? But you guys should know this. I see some of you guys are taking pictures. That's also fine. You can also take pictures of this. This lecture will also be online tonight if you want. So I don't care what you do. Do whatever you want.
What a shout.
All right. Here we go. Share those photos later. Election of 1836. Martin Van Buren runs as a Democrat, and the Whigs are like, we're geniuses. We will make sure that Democrats never win again. We will run 4 candidates from each section, and there's no way they'll be able to win because we're going to divide the vote. It's going to go to the House of Representatives, and then we'll be able to win there. We got this. And then they lost because they did not have enough votes to win the election because they're stupid. In any case, but it was it was a good idea. It wasn't going to work though. Martin Van Buren becomes the 8th president of the United States. Good stuff there. You should know that he inherits the Panic of 1837. Sucks for him. Caused by Jackson, yeah, definitely. And he tries to eliminate this America in the banking system by creating the Independent Treasury Bill, which separates America from the banking system, right? The idea is, what are we not going to do with our money anymore? Loan it. We're not going to over-speculate with it. We're going to put our money in a place to just store it. We're not going to lend it out anymore because the American government should not be in the business of banking. Jackson retires, very old. Here he is when I last interviewed him. He's very old. I don't know what year. I don't know what year that he died. Remember, and he said his final word, his biggest regrets. I should have killed Calhoun and Clay. My biggest regrets in life are not killing Calhoun and Clay when I had a chance. Bold words, Andrew Jackson. Bold words. Election of 1840. Harrison becomes president of the United States. Harrison dies. And then yes, that's the guy who died. He died in a month. So you like that? Harrison becomes president. And then he died. Next up. Supreme Court cases of Roger B. Taney. After Harrison? Tyler. He died of pneumonia, and he got really sick, and then the blueberries and all the other stuff. Yeah. And then he got pneumonia, and he ate blueberries, and he died. Anyway, a few cases you guys should know. Charles River Bridge v. Warren Bridge. This rules that what can states now do? They can break contracts. Cooley v. Board of Wardens. What can states now do? Regulate interstate commerce when the law is silent about it. So you can only regulate interstate commerce if there's no national law. So I can hypothetically regulate quadricycles. They don't exist yet. And there's no laws about them. So that's what I'm talking about. Quadricycles. Everyone good there? It's like a car, a quadricycle. Okay, next up. Market revolution. You guys doing okay out there? Let's charge through. Market revolution is next. What? Then you should still be going over your notes, regardless. All right, guys, market revolution. So we all know why governments industrialize. Guys, quiet. We all know why governments industrialize. Population is necessary to serve as laborers and consumers. You need natural resources. You need rivers and harbors to trade. You need transportation communication routes. You need an overseas market. You need a stable government. Good so far? Okay. We have the population. Population is growing even further. Some stuff happened. So let's talk about the population increase. We got immigrants. They're Irish immigrants. They came because of the potato famine. Are they poor or rich? Poor. Are they single or married? Why single and not married? It's too expensive, buddy. Also, male, female? Female. Because the men can still farm, right? They're just trying to bring the women over. Educated, not educated? Where do they live? In the cities on the East Coast. Why don't they just go out and buy a farm in the West? Oh, because they don't have money. They can't afford it. That makes sense. Are they pro or anti-abolition? Sorry. Are they pro or anti-slavery? They're pro-slavery, anti-abolition. Because if the blacks are freed, that'll be job competition. Right. Who liked them coming, though? Factory owners. Oh, cheap labor, cheap labor, cheap labor. Now, some people, though, said, no, I want jobs for Americans, so Nina. What's that? No Irish need apply. When I see little girls named Nina, I'm like, how dare you? Then I slapped them with a green clover. Now, eventually, do they do well for themselves? As they become dominant in the cities, they become police officers, firefighters. They're helped by the ancient order of Hibernia, so they're good there. Now, what's the other group? Germans. The Germans, they come for crop failures, democratic revolutions. Guys, quiet down. Their nickname is the 48ers. Educated, not educated? What did they bring with them? Kindergarten. Families are single? Why can they come in families? They're wealthier. Where did they move to? Why the West? Because they can afford it, and they're farmers. Did they learn to speak English? Why not? Because they're isolated and on their own. They can make their own German towns. Were they a strong political force? No, because they were scattered. Were the Irish a strong political force? Because they were concentrated. Good so far? Oh, abolitionists, yes or no? Anti-slavery, yay or nay? Yay. German immigrants, there they are. And then there's the people that hated them. Hated both of them. The nativists, the anti-foreigners, the know-nothing party that said, I didn't do that. That wasn't me. They felt that they were terrifying because of job competition. So the economic reason of why they don't like immigrants? Jobs, right? What's the social religious reason why they don't like them? They might outbreed them, and they are what? Catholics. Guys, they're Catholics. Social. They might outbreed them, and they're Catholics. And politically, why don't they like them? They might outvote them. Oh, back to social. Do they have more kids than the Americans? They breed a lot more. Cool? Good with immigrants? Awesome. Let's talk about roads. So, road building era. What's the most important roads you guys should know? Lancaster Turnpike and the Cumberland Road. Guys, shh, quiet please. Roads are important. Who opposed them? States' rights people, right? They said you can't make us all pay for a road if only some of us are going to use it. I mean, look at this road here. That's from like Vandalia, Illinois, all the way to Cumberland, Maryland. But should Massachusetts and New York have to pay for that road? No, they're not even there. But they're going to say, yes, you do. And so this is where Andrew Jackson is going to say, if this is the American system, that's unconstitutional. Because that's too much power for the federal government and not enough power for who? States. And so this will be opposed by Andrew Jackson. But did it improve communication? Does it make the world more democratic by being able to communicate? Yes. Most definitely. Land values increase, and it's also more democratic because what can people now do? They can move west. But we eventually replace all these roads because where we're going, we don't need roads. So you have the canal building era, and the canal building era is going to be pretty significant. Most famous canal? Erie Canal, where Dracula goes ice skiing. That's not a thing. Water skiing. Ice skiing might be a thing. Anyway, Erie Canal is better because it can take larger cargo. It makes shipping a lot faster. You guys should know the information. Not 20 days to 6 days, $100 a ton to $5 a ton. And also, will Western farmers benefit from this? Because now they can sell their goods. Because is it easier to travel than by road? Almost definitely. And then the steamboat happened. Created by who? Robert Fulton, which allows us to do what? Fly? Move up river. Specifically, which one? The Mississippi River. So who will this really benefit? The South. The South can now trade north and not just accept all the, hand-me-downs. So, here are all your canals. Pretty cool. Yay. Canals and rivers. You just need to know the Erie Canal, Panama Canal, Suez Canal. And those are all separated. Railroads, B&O Railroad. Yeah, the key ones. Railroad building era. Obviously, who doesn't like this? Canals and roads. States' rights don't like it. Causes a lot of fires. No standardized brakes. Kind of a problem. But overall, did this transportation revolution improve American society? Yes, it did. It results in regional specialization. Can each region now focus on a product, on a specific market? One of your charts today will be to analyze how each of these benefited from this market revolution, okay? The Midwest can now focus on just doing what? Foodstuffs, farming, and can they trade with someone? Sure. Northeast can now focus on manufacturing, right, and trade. South can now focus on cotton and cash crops and slavery. Be aware, and we'll still talk about more inventions, but is everyone clear on what's happening here? We have an integrated national market and a national economy. Everyone cool with that? Gets this? I imagine when you drop this in your chart, you guys will have a better understanding of it, but everyone gets the general idea of it, right? Communication improvements. Will this make us closer? Yes. Pony Express. Morse code and telegraph. I'm just going to charge through these. You guys know these. Transatlantic cable, definitely a must know. Allows us to communicate with whom? Europe. And then it gets severed. by the Loch Ness Monster? In the sea. Agricultural improvements, steel plow, who benefits? Which farmers? Western farmers and southern subsistence farmers. Let's take both. Western farmers and southern subsistence farmers. I guess also western subsistence farmers and northeastern all subsistence farmers and western farmers. Mechanical mower reaper, same thing, right? Beneficial. Cotton gin will help who? And who else? The Northeast. It'll help the North because they can make what cheaper? Clothes. And how will that help the Midwest? They can buy them for cheaper. You see how this regional market is connected? It's the domino effect. Very good. Manufacturing improvements. Samuel Slater is the father of? The factory system. Not to be confused with the other Samuel, who's the father of New France. Champlain. Lowell Mills hired whom? New England farmers' daughters. Paid them well. Educated them, right? And then they were eventually replaced by Irish immigrants. Interchangeable parts developed by whom? What does this do for manufacturing? Mass production, guys. It makes things cheaper. Who will benefit from interchangeable parts? Which regions? All regions will benefit from interchangeable parts, guys, because we'll just make all goods cheaper. So everyone benefits. But it'll definitely help the North during the Civil War. Steam engine, who benefits? Definitely northern factories. Vulcanized rubber, who benefits? Northern factories for the rubber belts. Sewing machine, who benefits? Northern factories. How dare you? So a steam engine, vulcanized rubber, sewing machine. Cool. Factory conditions. Poor working conditions, right? As factory became more mechanized, it became more boring and more dangerous, right? And so labor conditions got worse, longer hours, lower wages, kids had to work, and so labor unions started to strike, children were working, half the workers by 1820 were under the age of 10, so not good, guys. In fact, they were considered wage slaves or factory slaves. So that would be an impact of the market revolution, guys, is that you have the rise of wage slaves or factory slaves. In any case, how do we protect the unions? By which Supreme Court case? Commonwealth v. Hunt. It ruled that labor unions were legal. Factory slaves or wage slaves. Cool. Significance of the market revolution: integrated national market, regional specialization, division of labor, class distinctions, guys. Definitely. Change from home life to factory life, growth of cities, immigration, American system, strong economy. Good with that. Would that also make the government more democratic? Definitely. Next up, what are we on? Manifest Destiny? This is pretty easy. Okay, y'all. First things first. In your charts there is a chart that asks you, does this increase or decrease democracy? In general, folks, every time you get more land, what are you doing? Increasing or decreasing democracy? Increasing democracy, unless the land you're acquiring is going to be used for what? Slavery. Does that make sense to everyone? So if the original intention of the land was to be used for slavery, then that's not really for democracy. But will the people there maybe have more land to be independent also? Just make sure you have both sides of that argument. Is that fair with everyone? Cool. Moving forward. Manifest destiny. We all know why we did it. God-given right to expand west, right? Also natural resources. Webster-Ashburton Treaty and the Aroostook War. Everyone good there? The Maine and Canadian boundary dispute. Cool. Huh? It might. Aroostook War I've seen come up before. It's just, you never know. 80 questions. Could be on anything. Texas becomes independent from who? Mexico. That's probably should say Mexico becomes independent. Hold on. That makes more sense. Oh, wait, I see what's happening now. Oh, Texan independence is part of the history. Never mind. Got it. So, Mexico declares independence from Spain, and then they're like, hey, Americans, come to Mexico. And they're like, okay, we'll come to Mexico. Sam Houston and Stephen Austin come to Mexico. The only expectation is they must be Catholic, they must become Mexican, and they can't bring slaves. Which of those do they follow? None of them. And they say, hey, we're Americans. We can do whatever we want. So when General Santa Anna comes to power, he says, hey, stop coming to America. I mean, not America. Stop coming to Mexico. And they're like, no. And so they start illegally immigrating into Mexico. Texas says, well, you know what? We're going to keep doing what we're doing, so we're going to declare independence. Everyone good there so far? This is just background. Everyone following along? Everyone caught up? Okay. So, you should know the Battle of the Alamo, in which many of the Americans died, or the Tejanos and the Texans died, fighting the Mexican army. And who's really angry about this? America. They killed our brothers and sisters. We must remember the Alamo. Well, eventually they're able to defeat Santa Anna, the Battle of San Jacinto, and Texas becomes independent, right? They become the Lone Star Republic. And they say, hey, America, now that we're independent, what should you do? Annex us. And Jackson looks at that and says, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole for two reasons. What's the foreign reason? He doesn't want to start a war with Mexico, which Mexico has made very clear they will start. And two, what's the domestic reason? Sectional problems, sectional tensions. He doesn't want to admit Texas because Texas will become what? A slave state. So he says, sorry, Texas, you're on your own. Good so far? So Texas must remain independent, and they ask England and France, and America's like, oh, maybe we should take it. Huh? Jackson is the one who initially denied it. So you should know Jackson is the president that said no to Texas, and then Van Buren also said no. Jackson and Van Buren both said no. So then William Henry Harrison is there, like I said, and then he dies. And then John Tyler becomes the next president, and he's like, hey, he dies twice, just to make sure that we give him enough, credit. I feel like there's not enough credit to our that guy there. Anyway, John Tyler becomes president. He's the man without a party, right? Because he was not supposed to be president. He's not really a Democrat, but he's not really a Whig either. Everybody hates him. His accidency. Sorry, John Tyler. He looks out the window and wishes for friends. It's like he's trapped in like a tower and he wants to be saved. Someday my prince will come. Oregon! So, who jointly controls Oregon? The British and the Americans. And we start going to Oregon because the land there is pretty sweet, right? So we start going over there, and a lot of us go over there, and then we want Oregon, right? But how much of Oregon does America want? All of it. Now, why do the Northerners want all of Oregon? So they can make it into a lot of free states. Well, there's a debate here. England says, we'll give it to you at the 49th parallel. We say, hey, 5440 or fisticuffs, which means fight. And so there's an election, and James K. Polk is the president, and he's like, hey, I will run on the platform of expansion. If you vote for me, I will expand. And they're like, okay, let's vote for Polk. And Polk is supposed to make everybody happy, right? So he goes ahead and he annexes Texas, and the Southerners say, yes, we got all of Texas. And Southerners are unhappy, and Northerners are like, okay, you can have Texas, but wait till you see what he does with Oregon. And he's like, all right, and for Oregon, we'll take half of it. And they were like, no! This is not what we were expecting. Northerners believed that there was a Southern conspiracy, right? They believed that this was not fair. They said, why all of Texas but only half of Oregon? And really the answer was what? What didn't we want? We did not want war with England because we were going to go to war with Mexico. So here we are, yeah. Well, that's part of the territory. So we buy the Oregon Territory, which will eventually become Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. So it'll just merge eventually. So we decide, hey, I know that Mexico's pretty mad at us with the whole annexing Texas thing, but maybe they'll be cool about it. And maybe they'll give us California. So we send John Sly Guy, over to Mexico, and he's like, hey, can we buy California, Nevada, and New Mexico for $30 million and negotiate the boundary of Texas? And they're like, no. Right, oh, okay. So we intentionally start a war. And we send troops over to that disputed border between the Nueces and Rio Grande River. They fire at us because it looked like we were invading, and we said, did you just kill our guys? Because those guys were unarmed and innocent. I can't believe you did this, Mexico. You started a war. We didn't want a war that you knew about, and so now we're going to have to go to war. It's not our fault. You forced our hand. It's wartime. And the Mexican-American War begins. Well, Lincoln and David Wilmo are like, I don't know about this. This seems a bit fishy. So Lincoln's like, bah, spot resolution. I want to know what? The exact spot. And they're like, shut up, Lincoln. We're trying to fight a war. And he's like, okay, I'll just go back into my giant house. David Wilmo said, hey, I don't trust this either. I'm going to say, if you're true about this whole just fighting a war for honor thing, then when we win the war, what can't we do? No slavery on any territory won from the Mexican-American War. And he's like, okay, we're not going to do that. Why not? Because we lied. And we actually do want the territory for slavery. Anyway, California becomes independent, becomes a Bear Flag Republic in 1846. That's pretty cool. Then there's this battle, and then that battle, and then this battle, and then that battle, and then this battle, and then the Los Niños Héroes, because you don't have to know the battles. And then the war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Now, let's talk about this treaty terms real quick, because you guys seem to misunderstand this all the time. Number one, we did not get Texas. Why didn't we get Texas in this treaty? We already had Texas. They just said, okay, fine, you can keep it. Does that make sense? That's like if you stole your friend's video game and then you said, hey, I'll play you for it. That's what happened. They played them for Texas and they got to keep it. Also, they gave us the Mexican cession, but they only gave it, but we bought it for how much? Half
of what we offered them originally, 15 million. That's kind of a slap to the face. But it's okay because we gave them $3 million in like chump change. Threw them in the face. Right? You guys remember the analogy, right? Yeah. You steal their car, they're like, hey, you steal my car? I'm like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? So you steal their other car, and then as you're driving away, you get out of the car, you beat them up, and then you throw money in their face, like, take yourself to the hospital and clean yourself up. It's horrible. Horrible, America. So that happens. Not very good. There's the Mexican cession. Mexico wishes it happened some other way, but it did not. But did it increase democracy in America? Definitely. Oh, by the way, it will increase sectional tensions as we expand, right? Yes. So you should be aware of that, and you should know which regions benefited as we expanded. So make sure you're aware of which regions benefited. Last section. Can we do it in 10 minutes? I believe so. And if I run over just a bit, you guys will hang out for just a sec, right? Why not? Here we go. Shh. We have a night session on October. We should do those. Second Great Awakening. Not to be confused with the First Great Awakening. Religious revival again. Why? Because people left the church because they were moving where? West again. You had the rise of the Unitarians who believe in only one God. Don't worry about the Unitarians. You should know about the Baptists and the Methodists, though. They will come up likely. And you should just know specifically Peter Cartwright and Charles Grandison Finney. And you should know that the Baptists and the Methodists were a democratized religion. Or rather, they democratized religion. Because rather than having a minister that told you everything, yeah, the Baptists and the Methodists allowed them more of a voice in church, right? So it was a democratization of religion in the Baptist and Methodist church. Good there? Yeah, so the Baptists and Methodists was a democratization of religion because it gave more voice to the people because they said, hey, what do you want to do today? Bake sale. All right, let's do that. But next week we have to pray. Like, okay, next week. You also see the feminization of religion. What does that mean? Women become more religion, and more importantly, they take more control of the church, right? They become a more dominant voice. Husbands are going to focus more of their time doing what? Working, which means who's going to become the moral fiber of the family? The mother, or the wife, or the sister, or the great-great-grandmother, depending on how old you were. And with this Second Great Awakening, is this going to inspire women to become reformers? Yes. Most certainly. You also see the rise of African American churches, because are we going to Christianize blacks and freed blacks? Yes. Most definitely. Sometimes we do it to teach them, hey, God has a reason for everything, including slavery. That's kind of the teaching. Others are, hey, God has a reason for your suffering, but now that you're free, God will lead us all to salvation and freedom. So it works both ways. Cool. Then you have the Mormon Church. And the Mormon Church is introduced and led by Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. But they're disliked by other Christians because they had a new Bible, they had their own militia, and they practiced polygamy at the time. Eventually they go where? Salt Lake City. Led by whom? Brigham Young. By the way, we never talk about it, but there is a secret war that President Polk fought with the Mormons because the Mormons set up their own government and army. Huh? Yes. And so you have this secret war that happens between the government and the Mormons. Interesting stuff. Transcendentalists, are they an organized religion? No, they're not. Who said yes? How dare you? No, folks, they believe in truth and the senses. They don't like anything organized. They believe in nature and that society is corrupt. And more importantly, they want to believe in who instead? God and who else? Themselves. Self-reliance, individualism. They believe that abolition was important. They should go and do that.
So you had some famous writers, Emerson, Thoreau, and Walt Whitman. You should know that Emerson is the individualist guy, self-reliance guy. Thoreau is the civil disobedience guy. You should know that guy. And Walt Whitman is the poet, transcendentalist guy. Just know these three guys. You guys know these guys? Okay, so know these guys. Again, here's their basic agenda. You guys have their agenda? You guys have their agenda. You wrote this down somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, so just put a box around that. Know that. Don't worry about Hawthorne. Don't worry about significance. Reforms. Dorothea Dix reformed mental health and prisons. Good there? Moving on. Temperance movement. They try to eliminate what? Alcohol. So they try to do that, and two groups that emerged.
What year was this?
This is about 1820s, 30s, 40s. 1820s to 1850s is what this is. So you have the temperance movement. Again, the American Temperance Society and the teetotalists. What's the difference between the two? Yeah, one wants total abstinence and the other one wants temperance. And then you have the Maine law by Neil S. Dow that tried to make Maine what? Dry state. You got that going on. Everyone good so far? Yeah. Cool. Here's people dying. Women's rights. You have Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton that creates what conference? Seneca Falls Convention. A must know. Other famous women that were all for women's rights movement. Lucretia Mott, who is an abolitionist, and Elizabeth Blackwell, who was the first female doctor. Other women, Margaret Fuller, who wrote Women in the 19th Century. Women should work. Amelia Bloomer, what did she wear? Pants. And Lucy Stone, kept her last name. Everyone cool with those three? You sure? Again, stop me if I'm rushing. By the way, I'm rushing. Again, the idea is what is changing in society. They want to go from they want to change what idea? The cult of domesticity. Because right now, the cult of domesticity is spreading through society. Permeating, that's the word I'm looking for. Permeating through society. And they want to get rid of that cult of domesticity. So in the 1820s, you see a return of the cult of domesticity, and they want to get rid of it. They want to get rid of it. They want more women's suffrage. So you have Seneca Falls Convention. Here they are. Seneca falling it up. And they write the Declaration of Sentiments saying that women should be equal to men, that all men and women are created equal. That men were mean and they took away their rights, and marriage was a form of slavery. Education. Who reformed education? Horace Mann, you know it. There he is, reforming textbooks. What are the names of the textbooks? McGuffey Readers. But he did promote the 3 R's. Good for you. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm almost done here. Mary Lyon and Emma Willard educated women. Yeah, they opened up the first women's college and the first women's school. So Troy Seminary and Oberlin College. You guys are good there? Abolition movement. Slavery grew and grew. American Colonization Society. What do they want to do? Back to Africa. And they were going to compensate them, right? With compensation. Don't forget that part. What was the problem? No money. What's the other problem? They don't want to go. Third problem. They don't want to give it up. So that's not really going to work out so well. Other guy, William Lloyd Garrison. Yeah, American Anti-Slavery Society. He wrote what newspaper? Liberator. Immediate abolition. No compensation. Let's free these people. Cool. Hey, look, the tree getting cut down. Black abolitionists, Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth saying shenanigans. Why are we waiting? Let's have
abolition, and violent if necessary. Good, good. And then utopias. Here we go. Oh, wait, just kidding. Harriet Tubman. Moses of her people. Freed her people. 300 people. Singing things like, singing songs like follow the drinking gourd. Anyway, here's the Underground Railroad. Then utopian communities. Who do we have here? Shakers. The Shakers, led by Mother Ann Lee, was very Christian. They danced a lot, and they believed in celibacy. No sexy time. How did they manage to continue maintaining their society then? Well, they lasted for about 90 years, so how did they maintain their society? New recruits. Hey. Do I have a society for you? You look like a person that will never get married. Why not join the Shakers?
Somebody did get pregnant. Did they kick them out?
I imagine you were not allowed to get pregnant. Yeah. New Harmony, society based on what? Communal living and sharing. Communism, yes, but we don't call it communism yet. Communal sharing, cooperative sharing. We share all the resources created by who? Robert Owen. Oneida, led by who? John Humphrey Noyes. Believed in multiple partners, free love, birth control, eugenics, lots of sexy time in this society. They believed in communal raising of children, and they made silver products like the knives and forks that you eat with every day. Brook Farm, what kind of society? Transcendentalist society. George Ripley. Cool.